Welcome to episode 790 of the Barcelona podcast, brought to you by the Blue Wire Podcast Network. I'm Dan Hilton, and yes, Barcelona put in a valiant effort against Atletico Madrid, but they came up short. But there's definitely some big ideas to talk about. So to help me do that again, and while, of course, the chat helps me do that on BigUp, on the Watchalongs, as I hope you join me on Saturday for against Athletic Club. And then this is all kind of building and leading up to Newcastle next week. I do need help we will preview Newcastle. We're not going to get to that just yet here, but to at least break down Atletico Madrid stuff, I need some help, and that is Diego Larin to help me do that from D-Spot and Churros y Tacticas. And we are doing another, we'll say, home and home. This is not home and away. We're both on the same team, Diego, so it's not a home and away. So if you want to give your own introduction to your supporters, because this will be on your channels as well, please do so now.
Yes, it's another collaboration. Dan, I'm so happy to talk to you once again. Back-to-back sessions between D-Spot and the Barcelona pod. Certainly the home for all of you Barça fans that are spread across the globe that want to feel a little bit closer to your beloved clubs. What better way than have us two podcast collaborate? And like I said, it's an absolute pleasure. I had a great time last week. I was going to say the first time, but the first time was, of course, quite a few years ago. This has been a collaboration in the making for quite some time, but it's official now, and I'm happy to. We're going to try to make this a regular thing. And yeah, what better way to get this one started than talk about what took place at the Spotify Camp Nou in a very electrifying second leg of the Copa del Rey semi-final. Barça picking up the win, nearly mounting that comeback. Dan, I don't know how you walked away. I walked away feeling proud. I walked away feeling hopeful that there's better things to come the latter stage of the season, and hopefully at the end of the season, of course, as well, in terms of silverware. And I also felt that we were worthy of advancing in the next round. Now, those are all nice words, of course, but mean nothing when you're left empty-handed after what took place last week in that, poker of goals that we received in the Calderón or the Metropolitano.
Yeah, well, dear, I usually have to be really positive, but thankfully you're here to talk to me, so I get to be myself, which is somebody that is very cynical and a little bit cranky, which is good for me. So I actually want to start with the negative part of this. I think the bulk of our show here, when we talk about hope, right? Hope has, and why you and I both love to cover the youth team so much, and why I dig in, because that's what youth football is. Youth football is nothing but hope for the future and going, well, Barca's Academy, especially being Barca's Academy in La Masia, you always get to put all your hope in the future and say, this is why that Barca's going to win Champions Leagues 10 years from now or 5 years from now, or potentially even this year, depending on what we see. So I do want to put off the Marc Bernal and Lamine Yamal talk for, like, we'll say the beef of our show. I want to start with the negative stuff. And that is this Barcelona team put on probably, I know the goals didn't come. Yes, they scored 3 goals, and they have scored more goals in other games. But this was a big game. This was a big opponent. This was a good opponent. And this is Barcelona going out and really dominating. I mean, and this was a real domination. Probably the most enjoyable match of the season to watch. The best, well, for platitude, this was the best counter press by far. The best counter press by far. And I think that Pedri and Bernal starting next to each other had a lot to do with that. Let's put it that way. But the other side of that coin is that with that kind of intensity, and this was clearly the most intensity the team has started a match with. Like, we have been critical about the team and them giving up and shipping early goals in the first half of games. Because if I'm not mistaken, Barcelona have given up the least amount of second half goals, but they have given up an exaggerated amount of first half goals for a team that is leading the Liga by 4 points at this point. But the concern is that intensity, now Pedri seems okay, but you saw Pedri at the end of that match. The fact that even Hansi Flick asked him, hey, you want to come out of this game? And he said, no. And you can see Hansi Flick's face. And we didn't get a look at Ricard Pruna behind him. But if we could see Pruna's face, Pruna was probably the one who was really giving the old, they're just popping his collar and saying, oh, my God.
Also, it was sort of decided. It was discussed prior the match that Pedri was going to play 60, maximum 65 minutes. If I'm not mistaken, he actually said that in a press conference as well. Hansi Flick, that is, saying he's going to play for around an hour. So when that hour mark hit, they were like, yeah, you're coming off.
And I also think it's a difference between 60 minutes in respect to other teams, but there's a difference between 60 minutes of, we'll say, a ho hum game. Like, no offense to Celta de Vigo, but like we'll
Yeah.
say an afternoon game against Celta de Vigo in a Liga where it may be 3-3 and there might be some long counterattacks and things, but there's a different level of intensity. I mean, you've been to
Yeah.
the matches, right? There's a different
Yeah.
level of intensity from what we saw at that a night game yesterday as opposed or on Tuesday as opposed to what we see, in again an afternoon game in a Liga against a certain opponent. And I think
100%.
that intensity and those injuries, like you hope that Pedri doesn't go down, obviously, because you're still missing De Jong for the next month. But now Kounde and Balde, and Balde has been reported by the club he will be out for at least 4 weeks,
That's
which with those
official.
hammies, probably
Yep.
4 weeks. And then Kounde, it's one of those like until he's healthy again, which means 3 to 5 weeks, I think, for a hamstring.
Speculation is exactly, yeah, around the
Exactly.
5 week
So
mark. Mm.
and I think those two injuries, I mean, for Kounde, I've been talking about this for a long time, and these are probably almost different because Balde has now been rotated. He was rotated twice in the last 4 matches where he did not start. And then for Kounde, to me, it looks like an overload. It feels like an overload. I've been saying that his form, I think, was directly related to him being not rotated and just playing every important minute of every game. And so, now with those two and those two both going down in a match of that intensity, I think it all has to do I think it's all relevant, is what I'll say. I think that's a negative part of that. You cannot go out and play with that much intensity because those are really the matches where guys get hurt.
So, a couple of things that you touched upon. First of all, I think the intensity is sort of the main key word, if you will, of what you were saying in your, let's call it, opening monologue. And I would 100% double down on that. I think the intensity that we saw in this game is the kind of intensity that we miss. Maybe not every single game. You highlighted, a Celta de Vigo on a Sunday afternoon is very different. Maybe Celta in Balaidos, you could argue, is always a tough nut to crack. And I mean, so are many teams. But the point is well taken. Regular La Liga games is not the same as a knockout, especially if you're talking a semi-final of a Copa del Rey where you have to remontar, you have to go a la desesperada, the Hail Mary type style of football, the gung ho style of football, if you will, against an Atletico de Madrid. So, of course, we were always going to see a higher octane, intensity level, press, and just sheer willpower, this willingness to come back from 4 goals down. It was so evident, but it was so good to watch as well. Like, it was such a pleasurable, enjoyable game for the neutral spectator, for culés, and eventually colchoneros, because they got the ticket to the Copa final, of course. But it did leave me wondering, like, why is this team not able to, if not match this level of intensity, get close to this kind of intensity that we grew accustomed to last season, right? I mean, if we're talking like 70-80% of what we watched take place on Tuesday, we wouldn't be in a situation that we're in, despite now having this, again, what is a 4-point cushion over Real Madrid in the league. I think we would have been head over heels further in the league right now. We would be comfortably, focused on Newcastle, and maybe the game against Atletico would have been a whole different storyline altogether as well, because you rewind the tape last week and the team was a shell of themselves, right? I mean, I don't think that Atletico approached this game that much different than what they did last week neither. I just think that Barca were that much better and that much more determined to inflict pain upon the Colchoneros, that again, it just left me wondering, where were they last week, and why is this team so day and night when it comes to certain matches that we see in La Liga, where they concede from sometimes from the whistle, right, from within the first minute already against minor teams. And I really hope that this is sort of a point of inflection, as they say in Spanish, kind of a turning point for the team to say, listen, if we want to, we lost silverware now, right? The Copa del Rey we're not able to defend this title anymore. If we want to end this season with one of two cups titles that we can still win, we have to bring it each and every single game. The Champions League is the toughest of the titles to conquer, because just the sheer unpredictability of the Champions League in and of itself is already, all the factors that influence the outcome make it a lot more unpredictable. Again, sorry for the being redundant here, but the league trophy is certainly one now, especially with the 4 point cushion again over Real Madrid, is one that we have to win by any means or by all means necessary. And again, I just hope that this serves as a point of inflection. Now, you mentioned that we're going to have to go about these next upcoming games with the absences, two big ones for that, of Kounde and Alejandro Balde. And I'm quietly confident about that. I'm sort of okay with that. And by that I mean I'm just thankful it's not somebody else. Like it's not in the midfield, it's not in the forwards. I don't want to even name any names, not to jinx anything, but if we're going to miss two players right now for a month, 5 weeks, whatever it'll be, I might have picked Balde and Kounde, to be really honest. You know what I mean? Like if injuries are part of the game, and the way you talked about Kounde, you talked about that in the previous pod as well, just how many the sheer minutes, the workload, the minute load that he's had to deal with. And then Alejandro Balde that has, with the arrival of Cancelo as well, kind of seen his spot in the starting 11, I think, as well come under threat. And he hasn't been that same player neither that has been as explosive and a guarantee really for this team as he was in the past. And he's still very young, of course. I'm not writing him off, but he's not going to go to the World Cup with Spain because his form hasn't been that good. So I think with Cancelo now in and seeing what he can give to this team with the team joker, if you will, the plug and play player in any position defensively that is Eric Garcia, he can play in any of those positions as well, if not as a center back. And then you can, branch out a Gerard Martin or an Araujo. I want to be optimistic about this, Dan, and kind of think like, no está de todo mal. It's not all bad. Even though we're talking about two key players for this team, it could have been worse. I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, if I'm trying to see this half glass full, sure.
Yeah.
But last night I did wake up. I woke my partner up because I was having a terrible nightmare and I screamed João Cancelo versus Newcastle's wingers defending counters. And I woke up in a panic, in a sweat, because I mean I do understand the discourse because you're right. Offensively, Balde's form has not been there, but defending those counters, I mean, unless Barcelona are playing with this intensity and that line of confrontation is that high, right? You think about what the defensive job that Cancelo had to do against Atletico Madrid, and I praise particularly Juan Garcia, Cubarsi, and Gerard Martin. I thought that trio was supremely excellent. And I think the big difference between leg one and leg two is I think Atletico Madrid, while they were, you're right, not doing that many things different, they were sitting a little bit deeper in that mid block. So Barcelona's defenders did have about 10 to 15 yards more to figure out where their positioning was on that counter. But to that point as well, as we talked about rest defense, Pedri and Bernal are just they were in better spots to pick out those counters. And I think to the very last 5 minutes of the game, when he is completely on empty, the gas tank was gone, and yet Pedri still was able to make up that space and cut out that Sorloth counter late in that game. And I just, in my mind, I mean, the reason why he makes that, yes, it's effort, it's all those things, but it's also because he was in the right position to make that lung busting run back. And I go, was De Jong or Castro in leg one in that same position to make that defensive stand? And the answer is no. And then I asked, why is that? Well, that's because they were looking to overload the middle of the field, and they were also weary, that being the double pivot there, that they had to defend a little bit more out to the wing, and they were getting caught in no man's land. Because remember, Dani Olmo was tucking in as the inverted winger, and with Rafinha putting in the shift that he did, right? Like it is the domino effect about, this affects this, affects this, affects this. And I think with Rafinha back, and then Bernal and Pedri in the middle, there was just so much more solidity for Cancelo to play on those walkabouts.
Yes.
And so my fear, I mean, it is, when I look at the schedule coming up, I circle Newcastle and these two legs against them more than any other, because again, just like their wingers and their attackers can do these things by themselves. There's the counterattacks, like that is the fury that will exist for Newcastle. And I think, again, I want to dig in more about them. I mean, they haven't added anybody. So the Newcastle that Barcelona saw early in the season is still the Newcastle that they are. form has ebbed and flowed. But again, and that's not to say that Cancelo won't
With their
succeed.
own injury problems as well, right? I mean, it's they
They do
have
have injuries.
what's the captain's name, the Brazilian
Bruno's,
DM,
yeah, yeah, or
right?
Bruno Guimaraes, yeah, Bruno
Yeah,
Guimaraes.
yeah.
So they do have their own injury stuff. That is true. And so Barcelona hopefully can exploit those things. But yeah, I'm a little concerned about the Cancelo role because yes, when you're all attack, when you've got what was it, 71% of possession, like yeah, things are looking great. When you've got 21 total shots, 9 on target, 3.22 expected goals, and everything is all attack, it's great for Cancelo. But when things are a bit more up and down,
I
we'll
hear
see how
that.
that goes. And I guess my question then for you is to add to this, Xavi Aspar, the right back for Barca Athletic, who's healthy again, as well as Patricio Pacifico, who has just arrived, the Uruguayan left back young defender. They both trained at the first team today. So Hansi Flick is, I think, looking to incorporate them for some La Liga matches and potentially come off the bench. And also, you never know because also Jofre Torrens is basically out for the season now, which is unfortunate because this
Yeah.
was a pretty bit of real moment for him. But I think that to your point, I think we will see the back four of Eric Garcia at right back, and then Cubarsi, Gerard Martin, and Cancelo at left back. I think that's the foursome that we're going to see the most. Though that said, I actually might prefer Eric Garcia playing left back and João Cancelo on the right
Hmm.
more so than the inverse. But I'd like to hear what you
Is
think of
there
that. If you think there might be another combination, we'll see in the next
what
4 weeks more
what
often.
what what I find very telling right now is you're talking about Xavi Aspar, you're talking about this new arrival that I actually wasn't even aware of then, so kudos to you.
Well, I don't think
But
he's the Pacifico. Like
right.
he's a more defensive left back.
Uh-huh.
He's very much like a Gerard Martin regen, but I don't see him. Again, they're training with the first team, so Xavier Spar might get like 5 to 10 minutes
Yeah.
coming on as a fullback, but I don't see Pacifico in particular. He hasn't really staked his claim as a starter for Barca Athletic yet either. Right,
Right.
he is still like getting used to going from South America to Europe, so
Exactly. The
he
whole
just getting an
cultural.
opportunity. I'm just throwing it out there in case people see his
No,
name on the bench. Like that's who that is. He just arrived. I have a whole video on my channel and the podcast apps about the new arrivals and him being one of them that have come for Barca Athletic in the offseason.
so
Um,
he's one of the 4 or 5 new faces that
correct.
arrived. Okay,
Yes.
okay. I got you. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, what I was gonna say about those, not so much maybe Xavi Aspar, and if Joffre would be available, I think he would be a candidate for sure. But in terms of Jesus Christ, Palacios, has dicho? No, what did you say his name was? The Uruguayan kid,
Oh, Pacifico. Yeah, yeah.
Pacifico. Like these are players that if you're a Hansi Flick, you would have to trust them wholeheartedly and be very convinced of their capabilities to reach, to compete at the highest level. This is now crunch time of the season. It's that time of the season where trophies are won or lost, and I would hate if our fate would depend on a youngster that still has to make their professional debut, or let's say, cement their place amongst the elite. And you could ruin seasons or entire careers, rather, if you jump the gun a little bit. And so, to circle back to my surprise, is that I haven't heard the name Ronald Araujo come out of your mouth yet. Now, I know that he is sort of the end of the stick, the butt end of the joke for a lot of culés these days. I'm not fully, I want to, and call me an eternal optimist, Dan, but I'm not fully off of the Araujo train yet. It might not be a bandwagon or anything. And clearly he has a lot to prove to us and to himself and to his teammates to go back to that Ronald Araujo that was at some point hailed as the Vinny stopper. But why could this not be a turning point for a player that has all of the physical qualities, has all of the talent, has all of the abilities to be an elite defender, a world class defender, or at least, at the very least, a very solid defender? And I think really due to social pressure, but also highly unfortunate incidents that happened on the field where he was punished far too harshly. Remember the red card against QSG that, in my eyes, was completely uncalled for, especially when you look at now that there's some of the plays that don't get called at all, a penalty on Pedri, for example, etc. He was It's been just a world storm. It's been almost like a perfect storm for everything to go wrong for him mentally. I don't know what happens obviously in his personal life, but it's fair to say that it affected him enough to take some time away. Now that he's back, can we do you not even trust him to kind of slowly but surely slot himself back into a starting position, whether it be a central defender, but also as a wing back to kind of to help a team out in need? There's no trust there on your part.
Listen, I have been on the record and I have written articles for the Hooligan. I have had shows about this. I have said this season that to two players to me that could turn this around, and by turn this around, I mean make Barcelona a not only contender for the Champions League, but put them in like that inner circle of, hey, this is a team that could win it all. And yes, the bracket has been very kind, but I have been on record for months now saying Marc Bernal and his health and Ronald Araujo. If Hansi Flick got the most out of those two guys, those two players more than any other solve not all, but most of the structural issues that Barcelona has with a generally healthy team around them. But the thing, Diego, that I'm not pushing back on the potential of Ronald Araujo or what he could be. I'm merely observing the choices that Hansi Flick is making. And Ronald Araujo, if he has not yet staked his claim, like even with
Right.
Eric Garcia missing his first match, Ronald Araujo, yeah, he came on, but he played as the nine.
Yeah.
Hansi Flick is, I mean,
Yeah.
and this might be an agreement based on Ronald Araujo reincorporating himself in the squad this year. So maybe that's possible even for next year if he continues to be around the Camp Nou. But I think for this year, it is almost an acceptance from the player and from the manager and from his entire entorno as to where Araujo's role will fit down the stretch here. I think there's just a part of me that, I mean, again, that's just me seeing where Hansi Flick is playing him since he returned and his role since he returned. He has not got a spot start. He has been just
No.
coming off the bench. He's been
Yeah.
slowly being incorporated. And I think
Yeah.
that tells you where the play, I think that says more where the player is at more than it does where Hansi Flick views him and what he could be. And let me throw a little a little maybe X factor or wild card here in for you with Sevilla on March the 15th. So reminder, it's Athletic Club on the road this weekend, and then it's
Yeah.
Newcastle on Tuesday on the road. Then it's Barcelona against Sevilla, and yes, Sevilla did give Barcelona their, I'd say, biggest non-Atletico Madrid embarrassment. Actually, no, probably biggest embarrassment of the season. Which,
Was
by the
huge.
way, Ron Araujo started that match against Sevilla.
Right. Exactly. Yes, he
Things did
did.
not work out great.
But
So
again, and called for a very harsh penalty in that game. Like
correct.
that. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah, yeah.
it's
But
just not been
I don't think
when it rains,
Barcelona.
it pours.
I think Barcelona need to completely put that first matchup out of their minds. They're at home this time around, where again they've been perfect in the Liga. The one time they've lost at the Camp Nou this year was at PSG or against PSG. So is it a possibility that we have Mark Cosado, you want to talk, unfortunately, about stock and stock going down. His stock could not be lower at this point in his Barcelona career.
Yeah.
Gabi might be back, but also, no, Gabi's not back. I'm sorry, everybody. For the rest of the season, like, Gabi is going to be reincorporated. You think Bernal's being incorporated slowly. Gabi
Right.
is going to be very, let's not count on Gabi. But could Mark Cosado potentially play right back for that match? Like, I'm trying to circle that match, and I also circle Espanyol at home on April 12th if Kounde and Balde are not yet ready, even if they are. And I go, I mean, Marc Costado, you've got to get something out of him, but you also can't have Bernal. Bernal just started 2 games in a row for the first time, and I want to transition into Bernal and Lamine Yamal. Time-wise, we're kind of running out of time, so I know I threw some things out here, but you can mention Marc Bernal, but my audience loves when I have to bleep myself. So, of course, we're recording this, and I will have to bleep myself in post. But that Marc Bernal performance, I'm not talking about the 2 goals, but we can add those as a cherry on top. Holy Diego, for Marc Bernal, what he's capable of, like I'm somebody that is very, very measured in my approach, but I looked at that Marc Bernal next to Pedri performance yesterday, and I combined that with Lamine Yamal's stats of 104 touches, 14 of 18 successful dribbles, 1 of 7 on accurate cross. I don't care about that. 3 of 4 on accurate long balls, and 7 ball recoveries yesterday for Lamine Yamal with over 100 touches. He had 14 successful dribbles. And I put that together of Bernal and Lamine Yamal and that clean sheet from Pau Cubarsi, and I'm going to extend my holy and this is now going to be the third time I've had to beat myself, but I extend that to that trio. And yeah, I mean, this is awesome,
Yeah.
awesome, awesome, awesome. And when it comes to Bernal, same thing with Cubarsi and Lamine Yamal, as long as that trio is healthy, I do not want to contain my excitement. You want to talk about hope is a thing with feathers by Emily Dickinson. Look the poem up. I mean, this trio can have Barcelona absolutely flying high. My worry as I continue this metaphor is my hope after seeing that trio yesterday, is this like Icarus? And now am I taking my hope and my feathers and my flying too close to the sun when it comes to that trio? Because I mean, not to say that Pedri and Rafinha aren't essential to this, but I mean, Rafinha is a different generation. But yeah, I have nothing but looking at the advanced metrics yesterday. What those three did in particular, insane what they did. And if two of the three of them have those kind of performances week in and week out like this, I mean, Barcelona have a chance in every match. And if you want to talk about Champions League hope, it rests, unfortunately, I think, on three guys who were born in 2007, which for you and I, those were years that we very much remember. I mean, and we were very much alive at that point, and we were both driving vehicles and living lives. But yeah, I mean,
You know,
2007 is a year that gives me hope.
it's incredible. And who would have thought, like, if we were able to rewind the tape and I would have told you at the beginning of the season that this was going to be the, let's say, prime starting trio for Barca in the midfield, would you have believed it?
Yeah, I would. because I think Bernal, having watched him with Boris Athletic and then seeing him even in those first three matches before he went down with the ACL, you saw it. It's a different level of what his body and his frame allow, the ground that he's allowed to make up because of his frame. But then you couple that with his technical ability, his quick decision making, and the offensive threat that he is around the box. And I talked about this in the five headlines. You watch Declan Rice and you watch the idea of the modern pivot, right? Like that is what the modern six looks like now.
Mhm.
And his goal scoring, as I said, is a bit of a cherry on top, but it's not because that's who he was. Remember, he started as
Mhm.
a 10. So
Yeah.
the fact that anything he does in the double pivot is almost overextending what his footballing potential is. And the better he is, the deeper he goes, that is really the ceiling. Because
Yeah.
like what I expect from him as a box to box midfielder as an eight, that is his skill set. And I think
Yeah.
that skill set for him is a very high level. But next to
Yeah.
Pedri, if he's able to really excel in a double pivot as a six next to Pedri, that is where the ceiling lies. And to me, the
Mhm.
ceiling is really, really untapped. And I think the same thing with Lamine Yamal, with Bernal, because of his size and because of what he can look like as a six, it's going to take I'd say a few months even for us to stop saying Sergio Busquets every single time. And the same thing with Lamine Yamal. Like you say Lamine Yamal and you look at what he does on the right wing, and of course the name Messi comes up. But what I
Yeah.
love about Lamine Yamal already and our discourse around him is that we get to say Lamine Yamal. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
that's the proof of a great star or a
Yeah.
future star, is that
Yeah.
yeah, the comparison is there because he's the same position from an all-time legend, whatever. But Lamine
Yeah.
Yamal is now already Lamine Yamal in his own right, right? And I think
For
for
sure.
Marc Bernal, if he can do this for the remainder of this season, and then we'll say the legend begins next year. We'll stop with the Busquets stuff. And I think with Cubarsi, it's been the same thing already. Like the guy's already made 100 appearances. Like I mean, when you came on, we talked about it, like what he could be in terms of like his Barcelona career if he stays healthy. Cubarsi will be his own name. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like that's
No,
why
for sure. For sure.
you know what I'm saying? So it's like for Marc Bernal, it's like we're not there yet. We still have to talk
Yeah.
about Busquets because that's who
Yeah.
he's replacing with
Yeah.
heavy air quotes there. But we're a few months away from being able to say Marc Bernal and just say his name because he's a
Well,
different kind of player than Busquets.
I'm never gonna stop saying Marc Bernal, the bussy hole filler, because I just like the sound of it,
I
and so do
actually
some members
I
of
hate
the.
it. Diego, I hate that. I hate that. I might actually just bleep that whole line that you said.
But no, yeah. But what I was alluding to more, like Pedri was always going to be Pedri. You can bank on Pedri. He's proven that ever since he arrived, pretty much when Koeman was still in charge. And when I'm talking about like the prime, trio for the midfield, I wouldn't have really banked on Bernal breaking out. Like this is his breakout season. Yes, of course, last season during the off season, Hansi Flick immediately took a shining to him, and he was going to be a starter over Casado. Thankfully, Casado managed to somehow, some way, fill that void that, as you rightfully point out, that balloon is sort of, deflating as we speak, and his stock is certainly down. But for Marc Bernal to now step up the way that he has, I didn't expect that. I didn't expect it because of the injury, because of the maybe slow and secure approach that Hansi Flick was taking with him as well. For my liking, I don't know exactly what goes on behind the scenes. Certainly, I hear rumors and everything, but I started to get a little bit trepidatious that maybe Marc Bernal is not fully fit yet. Maybe the confidence is not entirely there yet, but he has exploded, onto the scene, like I said, in sort of what I deem his true breakout season for the first team in ways that have surpassed my expectations. And Fermin for me has to be that third option over Frankie de Jong at this point. And I say that with all love and kindness towards my paisan, my countryman Frankie de Jong. But right now, Fermin is the third wheel, like that the next starter that gives you that little extra, offensively speaking, also the energy, the certainty that you're going to get 100% from the player. We talked about intensity in the beginning of the podcast. That is synonymous to Fermin Lopez, and it's something that unfortunately Frankie de Jong, although you could probably argue that he's more tactically more of a skillful player than a Fermin Lopez. Unfortunately, his talent is too inconsistent to bank on him as a player, again, in my personal opinion, to be a regular starter. So right now, my pick is Fermin, Pedri, and Marc Bernal.
Well, I mean,
And when it
you're talking Fermin over Danny Olmo is really what you're talking about. Like, it's, again, I think when DeYoung comes back, I mean,
Danny Olmo, 100%.
I think there is a hope that it's Bernal and in every other with DeYoung. Like, again, like my fear is that Bernal started 2 games for the first time since he
I
came
think it's
back.
three. Wasn't it 3 games? I'm pretty sure he
2 games
started
in a row he
in
started.
Levante, like two in the wasn't it Levante, Villarreal, and now
Oh yeah, that's right. He just didn't start the first leg against Atletico Madrid.
yeah.
Yeah, you're right about that. So I hope that Bernal does not start this weekend against Athletic Club, and then you start him against Newcastle. I think
Really?
you
Okay.
got to go. You got to come back to Mark. Like, I understand that you want to start these guys, but he just
Mm,
went 90, and I think that's the fear with Pedri and Bernal. But also you can't sit both of them, so Bernal might have to go 60, and you don't start Pedri against Athletic Club with Newcastle ahead. I think like the lineup against Athletic Club, and they've been in awful form. Like
mm,
the name says a lot more. So I think I have quite a bit of confidence against Athletic Club that Hansi Flick. I mean, even like I might even trust a Xavi Aspar at right back and then Eric Garcia at defensive midfield to give one of Pedri or Marc Bernal a full rest, and then you start Costado next to Eric Garcia, and you go, okay, forwards win this game for us. Because just to talk about those forwards, I said 7 ball recoveries for Lamine Yamal. I thought when we talked about the counter press, I thought that was best Lamine Yamal's. That was his best pressing game of the season. But it does, to your point, have a lot to do with. I don't really want to talk about Ferran Torres on this pod. We actually don't have time. We'll do it next time. We'll do it in 2 weeks. But between Ferran Torres and his pressing, and Rafinha and his pressing, and Fermin Lopez and his pressing, that's
mm,
why Lamine Yamal had such a transcendent pressing game because Fermin and Rafinha were excellent. Like, I mean, Fermin Lopez really, to me, and it's a surprise to say this, but he was defensively the glue that kept all that together in the middle of the field. Like, we have criticized him, and I have in the past about, on the press, especially being too aggressive at times and leaving some holes and leaving guys exposed, but he did not put a foot wrong defensively. I mean, and he wasn't fouling. That was another big part of it. Like, he was coming in from behind, wasn't fouling, pressuring well. Yeah, Fermin, awesome game that is, again, not really highlighted by the highlights, and that's just the eye test and watching that. And, we said it in the first half of the season. It's been nice that Danny Olmo and Fermin have both in the second half of the year grabbed some kind of form. I mean, some decent form in terms of goal scoring and end product, but you can't look at the 10 position of Barcelona as just end product. And Fermin, what he gave in all those intangibles, I mean, he really is the guy between him and Rafinha to say that intensity wise, in terms of physicality, they can give Newcastle the game that Barcelona have to give them, especially in that first leg on the road in Newcastle, right?
yeah.
Like those two can really take it to Newcastle in a way that Barcelona have to do
Yeah.
physically that Barcelona did not do against Atletico Madrid in that first leg.
Mm.
Yeah.
There's still plenty of doubters, though, when it comes to Fermin. And you mentioned, you're right to point out that if discussing the trio, I should be talking about Fermin instead of a Dani Olmo, obviously. But for me, that's almost at this point like a foregone conclusion. And what surprises me is that there's still Fermin doubters and Dani Olmo backers. I've been, I don't want to say heavily disappointed, but if you want to talk about a sophomore slump, Dani Olmo is not the Dani Olmo that we saw last season. And even though injuries have sort of respected him, I feel like his form has let him down more often than not this season. I'm not a big proponent, a big fan of Dani Olmo in this his second season back at Barca, to be honest.
Well, I mean, he's had the
And
same number.
I don't get his backers neither. Sorry.
Well, I mean, he's had the same number of injuries that he's had every other year of his career. Like this is who he is. That start and stop, that match fitness. Like he going back to Dinamo Zagreb. Like it's never been. He's
Yeah,
never been able to put in
never. But I feel
15.
like this season has been a little bit better, or is that just my impression? No.
Well, his minutes are being balanced out a little bit better. Like last
Mm.
season, remember, Fermin went down, and then it seemed like those two would switch off. Like one of them is healthy, and then the other one's not healthy. And so Fermin has been healthy this season, which has meant that Olmo has had to play less minutes. That said, Olmo has been healthy, to your point, in this last stretch without Pedri and now without De Jong. And that was another option, I'll say, against Athletic Club on the weekend. Maybe you do have the opportunity to start at home Danny Olmo in, we'll say, the double pivot, but really it's
Yeah.
been like a especially if you start Eric Garcia at defensive midfield and start
Yeah.
somebody else right back, whoever that is, Casado, Esbar, like whatever it is. You start
Mhm.
Eric Garcia as the defensive midfielder, and then that means you can start Olmo and Fermin with him next to him, right? In
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
more traditional 4-3-3 with a single pivot. And we've seen Hansi Flick has done that while Pedri was out and De Jong was suspended, I think, for a game, and that's what we saw. So that is all very possible. Okay, so instead of getting negative, let's go back to the positive. We tried to make this into a game and we couldn't figure it out. But it definitely is we'll say the headline of this week. I saw Mundo Deportivo had an article coming out about it, but this class of 2007, and I'm going to give you the names. There's too many names because, again, this is the future. We don't know what's going to happen. But right now, from the class of 2007 at La Masia, you have Lamine Yamal, you have Marc Bernal, you have Pau Cubarsi. Those are first team professionals, okay? You have Jofre Torrens that has debuted with the first team already. You have Andres Cuenca, who, while he is playing right now at Sporting Gijón, he is currently still a Barcelona player. He's on loan at Sporting Gijón in the second division, and he has also made his debut for the first team. So that's 5 first team debuts from the class of 2007. And you also have some other names that I've been high on, but injuries or whatever it is has or form have thrown these names off. But to me, Landon Forde, Kim Junet, Leo Saka, Hafiz Gariba, there's a new recruit in Alice Gonzalez, Lovro Shelfe, who plays for the U19s, then another new recruit who came over in January in De Swansea Hanstein, who came over from Belgium, the Dutch center back, Shane Kluivert, Juan Hernandez, who's also played a plenty with the first team in training and has been on the bench. He's just not gotten that debut. Xavi Aspar, who we just mentioned, has been on the first team bench a ton, and Guim Victor, the younger brother of Pau Victor, who plays as a fullback, who's also trained with the first team a bunch. And I have to add a goalkeeper there in Eder Ayer. He has also been on the first team bench when there's been some other. Well, yeah, I mean, we when they shipped Ter Stegen off, so he's been a third goalkeeper sometimes when Diego Cochin gets to start with Barca Athletic when they play at the same time. So Eder Ayer is another 2007. That's a lot of names I threw at you, but as I said, like they have already solidified that from that list, 5 of them have made their first team debut, and 7 of them have at least been on the bench. Okay, that's a huge number. And the reason why I bring that up is because we're not comparing them player for player, like for like, because again, these players, we saw them in their prime, and these kids are all 18 years old. But the class of 87, okay, we have to bring that up. And now I don't want to call you old, Diego, but you were alive in 1987, and that you just missed me on that one. So this is the class of 87 is a little more your speed, but between Messi, PK, Fabregas, those are the big names from that group. But Vasquez, I should say, Victor Vasquez also had a long and fruitful career that was unfortunately upset by injuries. But back in the day, he was the biggest name. That was the guy that they said, Victor Vasquez, He's the attacking midfielder. He's our future. So PK winds up getting shipped to Manchester United in his late teens. Fabregas, obviously, when he's 16, goes to Arsenal. And of course, Messi by 1920, Messi was turning into Messi. But that's not it. I want to extend that list here. Marc Vaillant did make his first team debut, and then he winds up having a long career for Real Oviedo. Roger Girbey played in the fourth tier for a long time. Frank Songo played in the EPL for Portsmouth, also took on other English loans, and then also had a career in the first and second divisions with Zaragoza and Real Sociedad. He also was capped by Cameroon on 3 different occasions as an full international. And then Julio Jesus de Dios Moreno, easy for me to say, he played in the third and fourth tier of Spanish football. So, yes, that class is very top heavy with Messi, Piqué, and Fabregas. But along with Victor Vasquez and Marc Vaillant, they did produce a ton of professionals. And I know it seems crazy because we're only talking about like 4 or 5 names, but to have that many professionals out of your
Yeah.
academy in the same group is almost impossible, right? So what I want to add to this is that this class of '07, by already having 5 first team debuts, they are already brushing up to the idea of, this might be the second best, or potentially in the future, the best group, not again, individual players out of this. Again, Messi is Messi, but it might be the best group that we have had, and certainly I feel like it is the best group since the 1987 class.
It's impressive, man. Like, you mentioned all these names, and I'm going to be biased here because a lot of them I've been covering for, the 5 years that I was working at Barça TV. So I've seen the talents of these youngsters, from Lamine as well, obviously, which was the most obvious one, the one that really we were all fighting for to do his games. But the Joffres, the Landrys, the Kim Nunet, and some of these newly arrivals as well. Like there's some very real and exciting talent there. Xavi Espar is another one. Even Eder Ayer is a goalkeeper that is hugely highly rated in the Barca Academy, and they've been in a pickle for quite some time because he's not the youngest anymore. In fact, a lot of these players are now getting to their 20s, their late teens, early 20s. And the question is, what are we going to do with them? You had, you mentioned Diego Cochin, of course, but in terms of goalkeepers, there's so much talent there, and it spreads across the field. But how are you going to incorporate? You can't incorporate all of them, obviously, in the first team. And we saw that as well in previous cases, the reason why Thiago Alcantara or Cesc Fabregas or even a Piqué, or the most recent case and still painful, Dro Fernandez, right? That they leave their what do you call it? Their safe space, their comfort zone in Barça to explore opportunities elsewhere. But there's so much raw talent there at the moment, and I wasn't really aware of this. Quite frankly, the Mundo Deportivo article, I missed that one, so I appreciate you bringing this up. And obviously, if you go 1-for-1, as soon as you see the name Messi, you're inclined to kind of tip the scale in one certain way. And if you want to, space out, I don't know exactly where there's a good balance here of forwards, midfielders, and even a goalkeeper. But in terms of who would win, I would obviously still favor Messi and his class, just because they're established professionals by now, or probably retired as well. But we know what their ceiling has been, and
Well,
we still have to wait and see.
I think the better way to judge this would
Right?
be, I wonder, because again, we're not saying like verses, but I guess
Yeah.
my question would be to kind of, let's say, limit the Messi, on the field stuff. It's, I wonder, when the dust settles in hopefully 20 years from now, which of those classes made
Yeah.
more total
Make,
appearances for Barcelona's first team. I think that's the best way to
mm,
say it. Like, how
right.
many total appearances did those different classes make? And I think because of the way Fabregas left and came back, there's a chance. I mean, Cubarsi's already 100 appearances. Lamine
Yeah.
Yamal's, so
Yeah.
like, there's a chance that between Lamine Yamal, Bernal, and Cubarsi, if Bernal continue on this path too, that trio will make more than a total of, like, I don't know, what is it, 600, 800 total appearances between the three of them, right?
Yeah.
And so I think when I'm looking at it, I'm going, well, how many total first team Barcelona appearances is the class of 2007 going to make with the first team? Because you're right, not everybody's going to make it. But if you get like 3 starters out of that, that is, like, I mean, beyond anything that you could expect. And if you get a fourth whether it's Jofre Torrens or Esbar or Juan Hernandez or Onstein, because again, he's joined the U19, so he's going to be counted as like a La Masia player because he's
Yeah.
probably like 2 years away. And
Right.
again, I've been so high at Landy Fournette, the kid just can't stay healthy. So unfortunately, I had to sell some of that stock. But like as far as like that talent, like he was right there with Bernal and Cubarsi and
He
Lamine Yamal
was.
with
He
the
was.
U14s and 15s. And so yeah, we'll see how he is. And like Kim Jeanette, I don't think it's going to happen at Barca, but like that to me is a first team professional when I watch him play.
You don't think so, huh? You think it's going to be like what's the youngster that went to Mallorca that
Oh, John
um
Regili. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yes, Virgili. That was one when I saw him play, I was thinking that he's going to be a Barca starter or at least a first team player for sure.
Yeah. Well, I
And
think
this
for
hmm,
Keem, it has a lot to do with Danny Olmo and Fermin Lopez, and then some of the
hmm,
other players. Like the
yeah.
fact that the fact that Hansi Flick chose Joe Fernandez, and then you also have like Tony Fernandez and Guillermo
Yes,
or
yes.
Guillermo Fernandez or
The
Guille Fernandez
cousins.
for pulling out
Yeah,
there.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
and then Keem Jeanette this season still playing with the U19s. Like you feel like he'd already be in Barca Athletic or getting those first team call ups. And then the fact
Mm,
that even in the same position, like Juan Hernandez has been taking over Hansi Flick to the first team bench over again Junyet again. So like it's
yeah.
again
Right.
just like Araujo. It's not me saying this. It's not me saying this, Diego. It's the fact that the choices that Hansi Flick has made show you where he has him on the depth chart. But again, Hansi Flick could also choose to leave in the offseason. Keem Jeanette decides to stay, which I don't think is going to happen. It seems like
Yeah.
he's likely gone anyway this summer, regardless of who the first team coach is going to be. But hey, crazier things have happened. All right, next we have like
Shane,
two.
no, no. What? Shane Clivert. Any hope there? No, me personally, no. I can see him
As
just
a
fizzle
first
out.
team, yeah, as a first team professional, yes.
Yeah,
At Barcelona, no.
no, no,
I just
no.
don't think that the ceiling is there. But hey, he's had also when I did the La Masia recap that I do every 6 months, he was one of the first names that I brought up because he actually, with all the injuries of Barca Athletic, I didn't think he'd be there this season, but he has been at the level and he's contributing. So what I will say is Shane Kluivert this season is exceeding expectations.
Okay.
So you know, I don't want to again, I don't want to limit an 18-year-old kid. You know, you
Yeah,
just
yeah,
never
yeah, yeah.
know, and you know,
Yeah. No,
kids.
but the reality is as well is his last name is always going to be compared to his father, and in that case,
Yeah,
Patrick Kluivert was scoring Champions League, winning goals in the final at 18, and winning silverware with Ajax, like
I do
at the
think that
same
I
age.
do think
It's
his,
this crazy.
but I do think his older brothers and Justin Kluivert being it,
Justin, yeah.
I think that Justin Kluivert was the one at Ajax who kind of took the brunt of that responsibility, and like
Mm,
and I also think like Kluivert at Barcelona, like Patrick Kluivert at Barcelona, like I mean again his legend will say was made in the Netherlands, like with Ajax, not really at Barcelona. Like when we talk about those Barcelona forwards of that generation, like he's what the fifth or sixth name. I mean, if anything, I think he gets underappreciated
oh,
by like
100%.
by Kool-Aid's when we talk about the names of
Yeah,
the number
yeah.
nines in those right in the
They were
last
tough years. They
30
were
years.
they were they were tough Gaspar years, and he's always been up there with my favorite strikers of all time. I was just mesmerized by his movement, his ability, his first touch. He was kind of like a reincarnation of Van Basten, if you will, at his
Mm.
prime. And him and Bergkamp it's always been my one of my biggest what ifs and also disappointments. You talk about a lost golden generation. That those Holland teams from the '90s, late '80s to throughout the '90s, the fact that we didn't win more silverware in international competitions is just such a shame because and again, Patrick Kluivert was, you know, just such a prolific striker, man. He was so gifted. He was so good. He was great with both feet. He was excellent in the air with his head. His first touch was phenomenal. He had just such a finesse to his game, and again, very similar to a Bergkamp at that time. And when he arrived at Barca, I was ecstatic. I was so hopeful and so just such a appreciative, but also like I was fully on that bandwagon. I was supporting him game after game after game, and it was really painful to hear all this criticism hurled his way in particular. And I found often unfairly because again, those were tough years for. Even though he won some silverware, like some Ligas and a Copa del Rey with Van Gaal, and he stayed on a little bit longer after that. But I felt that yeah, he became more of a meme, if you will. Like he became more known for what was taking place at night, and at some point,
Mhm.
he owned a discotheque, he owned a club, and his name was just related more with things off the pitch as opposed to on it. And it's a shame that his career ended the way it did at Barca because yeah, I agree with you, Dan. I think that he was, still is, probably underappreciated. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta warn you. The minute you said Dennis Bergkamp, I did stop listening. Because as people know, I think I tweeted this out a few weeks ago. It was like, who is your Mount Rushmore? Who is your top four players of guys that never played at
Yeah.
Barcelona? And Dennis
Yeah.
Bergkamp is like, I am the perfect age to be like, that guy is the coolest guy ever. Like, so between, yeah, I mean, thankfully Thierry Henry did wind up playing at Barcelona. Okay, so we have two more segments here, and because of this collaboration, I want to take the opportunity to be able to talk to another person. So we are going to
Okay.
play a little bit of a game in one of our last big headlines here, and this has been some Discord. You and I think you're better at the hot takes than I am. So I'm going to say a hot take here,
Mm-hmm.
and we are going to go back and forth, and we're gonna. So here's a hot take: Lamine Yamal, and I actually believe this. And people argued with me about hyperbole. He's the best 18-year-old player in history. That is the hot take. That is the thing that usually would be hyperbole, but I don't think it's hyperbole. So what you and I are going to do now is that we are going to go back and forth, and we're going to name three names each about who might have been the better 18-year-old than Lamine Yamal, and make the case. Um, so this is the game that we're going to play. Would you like to go first, or do you want me to go first?
Mm, I follow in your footsteps, Dan. You take the lead
Okay,
here,
okay.
buddy.
Well, oh, no, no, no. I want this. I want this. I want this. Okay. So I think Lamine Yamal is the best 18-year-old because while R9, that being Brazilian Ronaldo, while he did win the Ballon d'Or at the age of 20, at 18, he was playing for PSV. He had just arrived from Brazil, and he was not yet the same R9 that Lamine Yamal is now. Lamine Yamal finished in the top three of the Ballon d'Or as technically his 17-year-old season, but as an 18-year-old kid, he's standing on stage, and he'd already won the Copa Trophy, which didn't exist back in the day. Of course, that's a newer trophy, but R9 to me, when you see him at PSV as an 18-year-old kid, that might have been. We're talking the eye test now, not about accomplishments, because I think that is going to be some of your names too. Just strictly eye test. R9 at PSV at 18. Holy smokes! Like he
Yeah.
was the leading line. He was the guy, and I think the only argument against Lamine Yamal that R9 has is that PSV of that time they were still like, oh, okay, can they win a Champions League? Like the Champions League did not have like the disparity of money that we see now. Like PSV was, they had a chance. Like they were there. They were there in, not to say inner circle, but they were right there with a contender. Remember, this is like Marseille had just won one a few years prior. You had Dortmund. I mean, Dortmund was in a good age, but they'd still won one like 2 years prior. So other teams still had a chance outside of like the big money bubble. But that R9, I mean, he was their guy. He was a talismanic figure in that team at the age of 18. So the argument would just be that responsibility plus again the eye test was more equal than you think it was. Like R9 was so much fun. Like Lamine Yamal on 18-year-old like talent alone with the ball at his feet, like yes, but R9 to me had an argument to be there. All right, your choice, your pick.
In terms of, so wait, let me get this straight. There's so much you said about R9. I get all excited because I remember all
Okay,
these images
reply to
vividly.
R9. Yeah, if we cut this for social media, we'll cut out all that other stuff. But okay, go
But
ahead.
wait, so let me stick to the rules.
Yeah,
So I have to say a name that is potentially better, or
that's
let me get
probably a
this right.
better. Yeah, if you don't think that Lamine Yamal is the best 18-year-old ever, give me another name.
Es que he is, but the arg. I mean, yeah, I was gonna say R9 is the only logical argument that you could make was better at 18, and I say that with all respect to Pelé, of course, who has won or had won the World Cup when he was 17. Yet I don't know how his career continued after winning the World Cup when he was 18. So we're gonna have to put, I guess, an asterisk behind his name
We
and say that,
we don't have a lot of Santos tape from
you know what
when
I'm saying?
from 1958. Yeah, yeah, we don't
Yeah,
have a lot of 1958 Santos tape to go back
right.
and pour under. Yeah,
Right. And then I started going through names, and you're looking at a Messi, you're thinking, well, obviously Messi, until you realize that at 18 Messi was playing 9 regular season games, so he wasn't part regularly for the first team. So that kind of, is underwhelming, or it doesn't really put him into contention to be a winner in this particular segment that we're doing. You look at a Neymar, you look at, I know the English are big on Rooney, Mark Owen, Jude Bellingham, all the names that you can come up with, except for an original Ronaldo, just don't hold weight. And I'm probably leaving Mbappe out of this, maybe somewhat unfairly to some of the watching here or the Madridistas. I don't know if you have any on your channel, Dan. But if you put these three together, and I know that on your list as well, you make a very honorable mention to a Maldini, but I think in these kind of conversations, defenders will always have a disadvantage over the forwards. It's the same reason why it's so difficult for them to win a Balde de Oro, right? Because they don't have the flashy plays, they don't have the goals, they don't have the assists, but also from a sheer skill level, like from a skillfulness point of view, it really just comes down to those three names, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have and accomplishments, of course. Which Mbappe, he was 19 by the time he won the World Cup, if I'm not mistaken,
Yes.
because he's
Yeah,
not
he was
really 18 year
19.
old
Yep.
anymore. But he had a great season for Monaco.
And
What
he was
Ronaldo
yeah,
did,
and
sorry,
he
what
was 17. He was 17 when Monaco made that run to the Champions League.
made
So
that run? Yes, yes,
yeah.
yes. But again, that doesn't match up with what Lamine has accomplished, right? What he has achieved at such an early age, leading Spain to the Euros, being a runner-up, if not, should have potentially won the Ballon d'Oro. With all respects to Dembele, who had a fantastic season with QSG. The fact that Lamine has achieved so much and so consistently and is doing what he's doing at an elite level week in, week out. Like the only name that I can think of, if I go through the memory bank, is an R9. And yes, at the time I was very, very young. I was still living in Holland at that time. And I've been a Barca fan all my life, Dan. I'm from Den Haag in Holland. And in my class, you were either an Ajax fan, a Feyenoord fan, or a PSV fan. In particular, at the time, it was like PSV or Ajax, because Ajax had the players that they had. The whole class of uh, what was it, 95 when they won the Champions League, and all those youngsters, the
Yeah.
Kluivers, the Davids, the Seedorfs, etc., the Liedmanen.
Lars, yeah.
Yes, but the really cool team to watch was PSV. Like, they had just come off of 5 seasons of Romario. Romario was somebody that you had, as a kid, you'd never seen anything like it in your life. Here comes this guy from South America, is used to the warm weather, and he's playing in rainy, cold nights or days rather, on pitches that are predominantly mud, dirt, just potholes everywhere, and he's making everybody look just silly, foolish. Now, I had to look up his age at the time, and unfortunately, he did pass the age of 18. He wasn't. He was in his early mid-20s, so he couldn't be formed. He couldn't form part of this conversation. But the next in line is like when Romario left the Barca, all of a sudden they managed to pick up this Ronaldo kid who not only just follows in his footsteps. It's like, forget about Romario. Here's the new guy. And
Mm-hmm.
he went on to score 35 goals in 36 games. And again, was just so superior over his peers. It just wasn't fair, and that kind of clash, like that kind of dominance, that kind of difference in quality and level at that age, you just don't see that. You don't see that. That's generational. That's once in a lifetime or every few decades. And Messi, we saw that. Like, you definitely saw that. I remember seeing Messi at a young age and looking seasoned defenders look foolish. But for whatever reason, they decided that let's take a more secure and slow approach with his integration in the first team. So he didn't get that regularidad, that continuity, let's say, that regular game time that a Lamine or a Ronaldo in his early days was getting at the elite, at the highest level. And so, if you have to pick between Lamine and R9, then I'm going to pull one for the home team, and I'm going to say Lamine Yamal, just purely based on the fact that he's playing in the Spanish league, and even though the Dutch league wasn't a lot better of a place and more competitive of a place than it is now, you know, Lamine is doing this in the Champions League against Inter de Milan, for Spain in major tournaments as
Mhm.
well. You know, he's just and it's not just my word. It's not just the eye test that is telling me that, but you're hearing other legends. You're hearing
Yeah.
Ruud Gullit. You're hearing other football philosophers, connoisseurs of the game. They just put Lamine Yamal right now at a whole different stratosphere, and uttering these exact words. We have never seen this at this level, at this age, be done before. And that is both very, very exciting. It's frightening as well. You hope that it all lasts and it doesn't all go, get to his head. But for me, there's just, one clear standout in this list of names that we have. And everybody is a runner up. And in R9's case, I would say definitely a close second. Yeah.
Well, Diego, I do appreciate that you did take our again our social content, and instead of making it a game, we just turned it into a one or
Sorry.
the other. Which no, it's good. Now it became, your explanation is it's Lamine Yamal or it's R9, and that is
Yeah.
not the conversation, which I think is again that's what you take out of this. I will say, if there are Madridistas still here an hour into our collaboration, the fact that you said Mark Owen instead of Michael Owen, that is the thing that's actually going to ignite
Michael.
their anger.
Michael Owen. Sorry.
Yeah. That's the thing that's going to ignite their anger.
I
Okay,
am
last,
notoriously bad with names. I think that has become clear over the course of these two podcasts
yeah.
that we've done.
Okay, so even though we're extended a bit of time of usually what I do, some people do like the long ones. So we're gonna finish up with one segment here again. We're gonna call this, like, again, you and I are also a little bit older, especially with our phones. So we're gonna call this our TikTok challenge. So we're challenging ourselves to play a fun game that hopefully creates a viral clip. And the topic I picked this week for our viral clip here is Barcelona players. So again, we're both gonna pick five here. We actually, this time, Diego, I'm going to make it stick to the rules. Okay.
Go, go.
So we have to pick, each of us are going to pick five players, and then people are going to tell, say who picked the better, non-Barcelona team, if whatever. I don't know. Let's not do it that way. I don't want to lose. But Barcelona players who were best on other teams' ranking. Okay. And what the other caveat here is, so it's going to be the gap between their peak and the Barca career. Okay. So it's like they were that much better somewhere else. And then for Barcelona, they were kind of a shell of themselves. So, I don't want to give away any other examples. I say we both have a list. We both have, put a bunch of different options. And of course, you can steal some of mine. I can steal some of yours. That's how this works. So, all right, we're going to pick five, and I'm going to let you go first.
All right. Well, I'm going to say Johan Cruyff. Johan Cruyff, the player, was better at Ajax than he was at Barca.
He was, but you think he was that much better? I mean, he did win the Ballon d'Ors, but like, you think he was that much? I mean, he was pretty gosh darn, like, he changed Barcelona.
He did, and he managed to win a title that we didn't win for 14 years, the league title. But I think as a player, you expected a whole lot more in terms of silverware. Especially coming off of what he won individually and collectively with an Ajax, and he didn't bring in all of the goods. I think that his hype and expectation was built around him.
All right. Okay. So I'm going to immediately have to counter
Keeping it
that.
short and sweet. Is that good?
Yeah. No, that's perfect.
Okay.
I'm going to immediately try to counter that and go with another one of the top five greats of all time in Diego Maradona, because Diego Maradona from Napoli to Barcelona. I didn't want you to take Maradona. So from Napoli to Barcelona, I mean, whether it was, we'll say the off the field stuff, I mean, the broken leg, of course, with the butcher the Basque butcher, or the butcher of Bilbao. There we go.
Yeah.
The jump between Maradona. If Maradona is only who he was at Barcelona, we don't even know the name Diego Maradona. But from Maradona, I mean, what he meant to Napoli, and yeah, of course, Argentinian legend, but like what he was at Napoli to what he was at Barcelona, I don't know if there's a greater difference. Because again, Cruyff was still like, he was him at Barcelona after being him at Ajax. But for Maradona, he was him at Napoli. He was still him at Barcelona, but it was
Come on.
it was more of a blip. I mean, again, like, is Maradona? I mean, I had the list behind me here, like the history list, and I've done it.
Yeah.
Maradona's career at Barcelona, he is not a top 25 player at Barcelona. He's not. Like, he talent wise, sure, but like his accomplishments at Barcelona, like it just he wasn't there long enough. He was
Yeah.
injured, and it just his performances were not consistent enough. So I don't know if there's a bigger gap between like he's
I
a
don't
top
like.
five player elsewhere, and he's not even a top 25 Barcelona player.
I don't know. I don't know. Can you say that, Dan? That seems blasphemous. Because I mean, you say yourself from a talent perspective,
He's still top
he
five,
is,
sure. From
but
a talent
still
perspective,
stuff.
it's like
But his accomplishments, no. But then my argument would be like, and as you rightly pointed out, that's because of one injury and two hepatitis B and all the
yeah,
partying that he had going. So it really came down to right his lack of discipline, if you will. Yet the moments, albeit not very many, but the moments that he had on the pitch, like they're highlight reels. He's a walking highlight reel. You look at the plays that he did individually with the Barca shirt, again, evading so many carnicero like, butcher like tackles that could have
it
inflicted
was a
more
different
pain
game
upon him.
too. That's
It
true.
was a completely different game,
Yeah, in the
and
80s,
the
it was
way
different.
that he I mean, to put him out of the top 25, I think again is blasphemous. But
But I mean, the reason I say that is because when you look at the other guys like him who played for
yeah,
Barcelona, and I know
yeah,
you might say somebody's name here, but when we're talking about, even in a season like R9's
yeah,
contribution, you talk about
yeah,
Romario, you're talking about Rivaldo, you're talking about Ronaldinho, you're
yeah,
talking about Messi.
yeah.
But again, are any of those guys like does he jump any of those guys in terms of
Right.
their careers at Barcelona? Is what I'm saying. And
Of
again, this is
course, of
not to
course.
disparage him. If we really just again list it out, and then you're saying
Yeah,
like contributions of Gerard Piqué or
yeah,
uh,
yeah.
Iniesta, Xavi, Dani Alves, like the list. This is not as far as Maradona. I'm just saying, like, if you list it out for Barcelona legends, you
Yes,
quickly are like, wait a second, where are we going to put Diego Maradona in
of
here?
course, of
Because
course.
even his own team didn't burn out. I mean, we're going on a tangent here, so maybe we only pick three at this point. But like, wasn't I mean, it felt it when I watch back the Barcelona teams of the '80s, and I've
Mm.
done a lot of my homework. It does feel like Bernd Schuster kind of winds up being like even, and he has went to Real Madrid, so that changed his legacy and everything. But he was a more because of the way that the game was played in the '80s. Bernd Schuster wound up having, we'll say the better Barca career than Diego
Yeah.
Maradona. I mean, he was the
No, for sure.
captain. Like,
Oh,
so, right.
hands down.
So that's what I mean. Like Maradona,
Yeah.
of course, he's a
Yes.
top three talent to ever play for Barcelona. Duh.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I'm just talking about his. I'm playing the game, and I'm saying the gap between the peak, and I think you're kind of proving my point. Sorry, because
It's
you're
true.
arguing for Maradona, and I'm saying, of course, I agree, totally agree with you.
Talent wise. Yeah.
Like guys say he's the best. Okay, all right, we've we've done the hard names, I'd say. So give me your next one.
Uh, there's a lot, unfortunately. I'm gonna go with Gaizka Mendieta. Super hyped arrival from a Valencia side that at the time was impossible to beat for us,
I
inflicted
love
all
that.
kinds of nightmares and pain that Piojo Lopez, that Gaizka Mendieta Valencia was just steamrolled us really. And when we were able to get the enemy on our side, it just turned out to be one big flop. And not that he's going to see this, but I have interviewed him twice. Gaizka, this is not personal. You're the only player to have ever scored 11 penalties straight for Barca. All of his goals, 11 goals for Barca, all penalties, 100% record, by the way. But it didn't really turn out to be, the Valencia Mendieta, unfortunately.
I love that. That is the spirit of the game, Diego. Because like the rest of our lists are like those are really, really good players. Amienta was a good player, but he might, of all the names, I think the only one it's not my pick, but Quaresma is the only other one I have on my list where I'm like that dude somewhere else was really good, and then for Barcelona, we literally don't even talk about him. Like it's like not even a name for Barcelona.
The reason why, Dan, is because Figo had just left and he came with that tag
Yeah,
of the
exactly.
Figo
Yeah.
replacement. And yes, he was very talented. I don't know why he plays on the Barca Legends team because
It's true.
even that is a stretch.
It's true. All right, let me give you. All right, let me give
What
you
about
another one.
Overmars? Overmars is a good one, I think.
Well, that might be your next one. So, okay,
Okay.
we've changed the game already. We're now only picking three. So I think this is my second one, right? Yeah, this is you went to now. Okay, this is my second one. I I'm going to go Zlatan Ibrahimovic because while Zlatan is not my favorite player, I feel like I don't know where to talk. Like when I list my number nines from this past generation in like whenever I name that list, his time at Barcelona was such a disaster that I don't name him. And then I listen to other people name their list of the top number nines of the 21st century, and he is in the top 10. He is on that list. But then again, I go and it's just his time at Barcelona so disparaged me to, what he was for everybody else. And I mean, everybody else, what he was in Italy, what he was for PSG. I mean, yeah, I mean, Zlatan,
Ajax as well. Yeah.
if you play Ajax, of course, coming up, if you play out his career 10 times at Barcelona, how many times does he have a better go of it, right? Like, I mean, maybe 9 of the times that you play, you know what I mean? Like, it was just like actually a 10th percentile worst case scenario for him at Barcelona in comparison to the rest of his career.
But do you think that came? Sorry, I don't want to make this a long-winded segment. I think that's a good pick. I don't know if I would double down in calling it as disastrous as you brand it to be. I think the clash came much more down to personalities and tactical fits as opposed to really his output on the field, which I think it took a while. But once Messi sort of backed him and said, "Okay, you know, I'm going to give you scoring opportunities. I'm going to pass you the ball." We don't know what was said behind the scenes. Obviously,
Yeah,
you probably read the books, you've read the reports. Guardiola said, the ball's going to go to Messi every single time. And he basically blacklisted Zlatan Ibrahimovic, which was in the end the reason why he left. But I feel like that partnership between Zlatan and Messi wasn't as controversial or as poisonous as we were led to believe at the
yeah,
time. And it could have been a lot more fruitful had egos not gone in a way. And I love, still do, Zlatan, because I think he's that prototypical, like he's that classic number nine that has the finesse, the tactical abilities, similar to what I was alluding to before with the Kluivert and the Bergkamp. But then the physique and the power. He was the, if you had footballing gods construct a football player, I think they would have come up with a Zlatan, honestly.
I think that's a Zlatan quote. I think
Is
you're.
it? Is that right?
Well, I mean, in his in
It might,
his
it might have been in the back of my head now.
in his autobiography, he does say. I mean, I think he does ham it up a little bit, but that is definitely something that he has said himself in some kind of in lesser words. Or, but yeah, he's also an all time of his generation, an all time quote master. Like
Yeah.
there's a lot of Zlatan quotes that we attribute, not say not to him, but like that he has said. Okay, next one for you. I guess we'll have to cut this. We could do a much longer segment, and if people want more, let us know. But
It's just
what is your?
not working out how you had in mind, Dan. I'm
It's okay.
sorry.
So what is your last pick? Yeah, we could do 5,
I'll
but
go,
let's.
I'll go with Mark Overmars. Overmars. Now it is Mark, not Michael Overmars.
Correct.
But yeah, Mark Overmars. Again, similar to Quaresma, if you will. Figo had just left. We needed that explosive winger. He came with a hefty price tag. Gaspar throwing Figo money against the wall. It should have stuck in the case of Overmars. Those of you that saw the Arsenal in those days will remember, and the Dutch national side, just how good he was and how good of a fit as well. He should have been at Barca. You're talking about a player that really, fits that football total, that tiki-taka style of play that still Van Gaal was trying to implement, bless the old man, but it didn't work out. It didn't work out at all for whatever reason. Now that we know a little bit more about his private life, I might have some ideas as to what was going on at the time, and it has unfortunately more to do with off the pitch related matters than on the pitch. But that's me just putting silly thoughts in your heads there. I don't know why it didn't work out, quite frankly, and it's still it's still one of the big what ifs. What if Overmars would have worked at that time? Because I thought it was an excellent signing.
Yeah, I totally agree with there. Man, for my third and last pick, there's different ways you can go with this, right? There's guys that are just like they were really good at Barca, but somehow their peaks or they were better elsewhere, like the Spanish Luis Suarez for what he would then do at Inter Milan. You have again Lewandowski is gonna be an all time scorer for Barcelona. He's already obviously was he top? Was it he just hit 6 the other day, right, or 7? Or
No,
10,
did
sorry,
he?
sorry. Yeah, I don't know what he did. It was 10 or
Wow.
again. I don't. I'll pay attention to that later. Yeah, you correct me on that one.
Let me check.
So Lewandowski, like again what he did for his whole career at Bayern. But yeah, but Barcelona, like he's still one of the all-time scorers. I mean, Dembele winds up winning a Ballon d'Or after he left. Thierry Henry for what he was at Arsenal, and then of course he takes a different role at Barcelona. Griezmann, Coutinho, even Thiago Alcantara to Bayern Munich, what he became. I mean, a big name. So I'm pretty much
Yeah.
I'm trying to decide between three here. I think Neeskens for who he was at Ajax, like, and then coming to Barcelona in the mid '70s there, and then to me the other two big names that jump out are Fabregas and Riquelme. Those are kind of
Yeah.
my final three for a pick, and I think where I'm going to go is I'm going to go Riquelme because
Mm,
Neeskens and Fabregas still had good
yeah.
Barcelona careers, and I think Riquelme, unfortunately for him, he's kind of considered, kind of to the point you made about before about Quaresma coming in after Luis Figo. Riquelme, in the era that he arrived, he was from Villarreal. It was said that he was going to be the guy. He was going to be the 10. He was going to be the guy that the team was kind of formed around, and he was going to unlock everything. And he was the hope. And it just
From Boca, you mean? Sorry, yeah.
from Boca. Sorry. And then we watched what he became at Villarreal. Sorry, yeah.
Yes,
It
yes,
reversed
yes.
that. So Riquelme, what he was at Boca, then he became at Villarreal, where he was the man. And I think he kind of is in that category of, I
For
wouldn't call him
sure.
a flop, but again, very much like the Zlatan argument. If you play his career at Barcelona out 10 times, I think at least seven of those, like, or eight of those, we'll say different permutations work out better. So I think Riquelme, for that reason, is my last choice. Because again, Fabregas
That's a
and
good
Neeskens,
call.
like, they still had like decent careers at Barcelona.
Oh, definitely. And Riquelme, and again, it comes down similar to Zlatan as well, as you were pointing out. It has more to do, in my opinion, with personality
Yeah.
and the clashes of them. In again, also in his case with Louis van Gaal, than a skill level, right? I was so hyped. I think I had seen every single highlight reel, like downloaded it from what is it called, like the torrent downloads. You know, when you still were doing torrent downloads, I had all the Boca downloads,
Hey,
highlights rather.
don't get us copy strikes. Come on. Don't get,
Just this is nowadays. I'm sure that they have other ways of doing that, but yeah, I
yeah.
had so many Boca highlights, and I was just drooling over Riquelme coming that whole summer. I was just like, "We're staying. This is going to be amazing." The hype was real. We had him and Saviola coming, and it just you. I think we could call it a flop, and there's no disgrace in that. As in, some signings work, some don't. And he came with so much hype. Even at Villarreal, even though they overachieved and they managed to get to the semifinal, had basically one foot in the final and probably deserved to go through as well. That would have been an interesting one between Barca and Villarreal at the time. In the end, it was Arsenal that went through, but it was Riquelme for me never really went back to being that hyped of a player that he was at Boca. And what surprises me is how many, if you ask any player now, you ask a Messi, so many players, they always regard him so highly. They talk about
Yeah.
their favorite, Riquelme is always on that list. So that's a massive, yeah, what if case, if not a flop. But yeah, that's a good shout.
Yeah, so there's our
100%.
list. How we're gonna cut this up and put that on social media.
That's a good deal. You
Let's
need to
let
give me instructions next time, Dan. I can't keep up with you young folk. I don't know how you do this.
yeah, okay, young folk. Yeah. My gray hair says young folk. All right, Diego. I think at this point, you and I both need a nap again in our old age at this point. So we're gonna have to cut this down, edit all this good stuff. But yeah, this was a great second collaboration. If you're still here, I don't need to tell you where to find both of us. Again, you're likely a fan of this, as this one might be. I think it's his top 5 longest shows I've ever done. So credit to
Really?
you, credit to myself. We tried out some new things, had some fun today, and I implore everybody watching again, either on his channel or on my channel, check out the other one. We also both make a lot of exclusive content, so please enjoy that. And as always, until next time, we're Sparta.